Obviously, phone calling is not super scalable. So I said, what if I start messaging?
What were some of the challenges and how did you make that work in terms of convincing them to consider short-term rentals?
The key is definitely with your data list and knowing what property it is, who's the owner.
How do you actually incentivize them to want to give you those referrals, become top of mind for them, and the relationship building aspect of it? That's something that you cannot automate.
If it gets you $100,000 a year property, was it worth an extra 10 minutes to go find it? Definitely. It was a hard decision to make, but I knew what had to be done.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality. And today I'm here with JJ King. Very excited to have you on. How are you doing, JJ?
Doing great. Doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So JJ is the co-founder at Beachside Vacation Rentals. He also has worked with Vintori. Prior to working with Vintori, he actually built a company in the, let's call it, owner acquisition space and actually sold it to Vintori. Has been, in the guest services side of things, in the growth side of things, operations, tech stack. There's a lot we're gonna, get into today. But before going into the specifics, JJ, can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get into this hospitality and vacation rental world? And yeah, just give us some context of who you are.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I think a lot of property managers kind of fell into the short-term rental space. So I studied hospitality management in college, and worked a bunch of different hospitality jobs all through college. I worked at a um, super luxury resort. I've worked at a country club, restaurants. Kind of dabbled in a bunch of different hospitality aspects, and kind of saw my career trajectory in all of those different uh, businesses, and didn't love the direction that it was going. So after I graduated college, I moved to New York City without a job, and was just kind of wondering what I was going to do with my life. I thought I was going to go into hospitality technology. Was planning on working in doing restaurant POS systems, and unfortunately ended up not getting a job when I moved to New York doing that. And I answered a Craigslist ad of all things to help somebody manage their Airbnb empire, if you will. So they were doing lease arbitrage in New York City, and when I started with them, they had about 15 units, and so I was just kind of their hospitality person to kind of bring everything together, do guest messaging, that sort of thing. We really blew it up. So we went from 15 to 100 units in less than a year, and I got to learn everything along the way in terms of, how do we implement a property management system? How do we manage cleaners? How do we, manage all of these different logistics? Because things change a lot when you go from 15 units to 100 units, So,
Mm-hmm.
um, like I said, I kind of fell into the short-term rental space there because it was something that, at the time, is back in 2016, was still the Airbnb world, if you will, was still relatively new. Obviously, vacation rentals have been around way longer, but in an urban market like that, it was kind of new and exciting. And so I got to get in on an early stage at a company that wasn't really a company when it started. It was,
Mm-hmm.
somebody's kind of side hustle that they had hired me for, and we built it up into a legitimate hospitality company. Unfortunately, regulations in New York City are not good, and um, we ended up, basically just shutting the doors with that company. And so I left New York City, moved to Raleigh to get out of the city, and kind of started anew. So yeah, that's how I got started in the industry, and I worked a couple of jobs, worked in sales at a technology startup, and ended up starting my own company again because it was, I don't know, there's something in me that is just kind of wants to be entrepreneurial, doing my own thing. So um, I took what I had learned in New York City and reaching out to landlords and homeowners trying to kind of generate leads, and um, ended up making a secondary company. So that was what VRM Leads was. So that one actually came about with a company called Rabu. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but back in, I guess it's probably 2020, they were a property manager. They're now a technology company, but they were a property manager at the time, and they were looking for commission only sales reps. And
Okay.
so this was right around COVID, and I had lost my technology sales job during COVID because it was basically event staffing. So event staffing in COVID was not
Right.
very popular, right? So I had answered a ad for a commission only sales rep for Rabu, and basically they said you need to figure out how to generate leads for us. You know, they're not, you don't have any leads to work with. You need to come up with how we're going to reach out to property owners. And I said, all right. So I thought about it for a little bit, and they were also primarily in urban markets. And so I said, let's take a look at Zillow, for rent by owner properties. And I picked up the phone and I started calling, and I was paid based on meeting and then commission on closing. So just setting a meeting, I would get paid, and then closing, I would get paid.
Mm-hmm.
I started calling property owners on Zillow and any other of the rental sites that I could find. And I kid you not, first 10 calls, I set 5 meetings. It was just like, answered, said, hey, I see your property's listed for rent for long term. Would you ever be interested in converting this to short term? Could make you more money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just wondering if you're interested in a discussion. Like, yeah, absolutely. I just got so many yeses right off the bat that I was like, I think I'm onto something here. Um, Obviously, phone calling is not super scalable. So I said, what if I start messaging? What happens if I just send people a message on Zillow or Hotpads or any of those other sites?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. The conversion rate was great. People would just respond back and say, "Yeah, that actually sounds really interesting. I'm interested in setting a meeting." So, um, then like right then, I knew that I was on to something, that people were actually interested in talking. So I worked with the developer to build out an automation that would automatically send these messages on these platforms,
Mm-hmm.
and had a lot of dynamic variables. There's a lot of nuance to being able to send out those messages because, as you can imagine, Zillow does not like you sending out hundreds of thousands of messages a day on their platform to for rent by owner properties. So there's a lot of nuance in developing that program, but essentially I ended up developing this program that we worked around the country. I think I was in about 60 markets sending out messages to different for rent by owner properties for different property managers, and kind of kept that same model that I started with Rabu, where as a property manager, if you signed up with VRM Leads, you didn't have to pay anything until I actually set a meeting, and then it was a very small amount to set the meeting, and then a larger amount on commission if the property actually closed. So it was a super good model, and that
Mm-hmm.
is very low risk on the property manager side. So yeah, and one thing led to another, and got the opportunity to get acquired by Ventory, and got to go work at Ventory for I think almost 3 years, and worked a bunch of different positions at Ventory, starting at account manager, and then ended up before leaving to be a product owner. So I got to kind of dictate the path that our product was going, and worked with the developers and make some cool stuff. So that's
Wow, wow,
oh,
wow,
and then,
wow. That's
yeah.
and we're not even in the part where you start a management company yet. That's so before we go into the management company, okay? Let's start there for a minute. Let me try to dig deeper into some of the things you mentioned there. So, first of all, the company that grew from 15 units to 100 or so in New York, that's, I guess, where you learn, as you were saying, a lot of the basics of sort of scaling an operation, an STR operation. What and also on the lead generation side of things, I guess, so there's some things you learn there too. What if you could summarize it as sort of a key learning, key takeaway from that first sort of experience of yours? What was the main thing you took with you as a learning from that experience? That
Yeah, well, it was at that point just finding out that property management systems were a thing. I think
Okay,
like
okay,
nowadays, every property manager, every professional property manager has a management system. I would assume,
yeah,
but at that time we were just managing on Airbnb. We had different Airbnb accounts, and basically everything was through email. So you just kept an eye on the email inbox, and then if you got a message, you had to log into that Airbnb account and send messages. So just the implementation of a property management system to be able to keep track of all the different listings and
sure,
sending messages and things like that was a huge win
okay,
for us at the
okay,
time. And I think one of the big things that I learned from that experience was just the ability to go through a demo and know what you want and what you're looking for, and be able to kind of ask the right questions, because we also made some mistakes in signing up with things that weren't necessarily what we thought, or
mm,
didn't work the way you thought until you got in there. So over the years kind of gotten better at
mm-hmm.
uh, asking a little bit more leading questions, and not just assuming that things work the way that you think they do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Make sure, yeah, if you set up any system, that it's gonna be scalable, that it's gonna have the features that you need, both on the front end and back end side of things. That makes sense. And was that all? I know it was arbitrage at first, but did the rest of the growth also happen through the same models, through the same arbitrage model in that first company in New York? So you guys went from 15 to 100 arbitrage units.
Yeah, it was mostly arbitrage. There were a couple management deals, but the model for that company was almost all arbitrage.
And you were involved in the lead generation side of things in that business too, like in terms of trying to get new properties on board. I guess you were trying to go with. Were you signing up like one unit at a time, or were you going with like sort of buildings that had multi-unit uh, components to it? What was it that you were going after, and how were you getting those leads?
Yeah, so most of what I did was on the operation side in that business. I was involved a little bit in some of the outreach. It was a mix um, of individual listings and some kind of larger lease deals where there were multiple units in a building. What I learned in that experience, we actually started kind of a spin-off cleaning company, and that was where I got a lot of the kind of some of the outreach things that I learned there. Between at that time, Craigslist was really big, so um, we got a lot of cleaning leads for other Airbnb hosts off of Craigslist, and then also doing some SEO for our website, and actually doing outreach directly on Airbnb, which they don't really allow you to do much anymore. But at the time, you could reach out to hosts directly on Airbnb too.
Okay, okay, okay. So now, and then if we fast forward, you have a couple of jobs here and there and whatnot, and then VRM leads, right? That's sort of the next thing that you start, the next entrepreneurial venture, right? So the model, you set a meeting, you get a fee for setting the meeting, and then you get a commission if that ends up signing. Now, from what I understood, you're converting people from long-term rentals to short-term rentals. They're putting it out there as long-term rentals, and you're offering them to switch to short-term rentals. Um, what were some of the challenges with doing that? Versus maybe trying to take people that already are operating as a short-term rental and trying to change them. I mean, I see pros and cons. I mean, the advantage is that it's almost like a blue ocean, right? Like you can go out there and there's going to be a bunch of people that you can reach out to, and you found a way to get to them, quote unquote, easily, right? Or at
Right.
least the information was easily accessible. Then you automated it. What were some of the challenges, and how did you make that work in terms of convincing them to consider short-term rentals?
Right. Yeah. So there were definitely some challenges to that. I would say the number one challenge and kind of pitfall of that model was that it worked really, really well in urban markets where there's a lot of long-term inventory and maybe a lot of people who hadn't even considered doing short-term rentals. It did not work at all in traditional vacation rental markets. If it was Myrtle Beach or, Panama City, things like that. One, there's very few long-term for by owner properties anyway. And then two, there's probably a reason that that person's doing long-term instead of short-term in that market. So I did turn away quite a few managers in traditional markets that wanted to do it just because it was like, we're spinning wheels here.
Mm.
But any urban market had a pretty good conversion rate. And the other um, kind of issue that came up, which, as you can imagine, is that owner is going to have to furnish that property, and it's empty as when they're listing it for long term, and then going to short term, you have to make the investment to furnish the property. So I worked with the property managers in my program to either get a referral partner, like a referral design partner that would design and furnish the property, or some of them had it in house as well. So if in your first call with the owner that they're able to give that presentation and say, yes, it is going to cost you, 10, 15, $20,000 to furnish the property, but here's the payback, here's your return, here's what we're projecting to make for, the first year, second year. As long as they have that kind of answer ready, then it can give the property owner, a good thing to think about. But if you
Mm.
go into the meeting and you're like, oh yeah, it's unfurnished, yeah, good luck.
Right, right, right.
Right, like that's not the way to go about it. So it did take a little bit of coaching with some of the property managers just so that they knew, like, these leads coming in are very early on in this short-term rental industry journey, and you need to coach them on why are short-term rentals an interesting prospect for your property. How do you go about doing it? How do you get it furnished? All of that kind of stuff, because a lot of times they were very just kind of uneducated on all of it.
Yeah, no, those are two great points. Now, you had experienced the risk of regulation becoming an issue in your New York operation, and now here you are, sort of growing this, leads solution, leads acquisition solution, where you realize that, oh, guess what? It doesn't work in the traditional, STR markets. It's working mainly on the urban markets. Um, was regulations also sort of a concern in terms of that, or was it not so much of an issue back when you were doing it?
Yeah, I think regulations are always an issue, for
For sure, for
anybody.
sure, for
I
sure.
saw it at Ventori as well, where we there were a couple of property managers that their business basically changed overnight due to regulations, even in established short-term rental markets.
Okay.
So, um, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern. It was definitely, there were a couple of markets where we had to adjust the search filters dramatically to where, it's like you could only look for owner occupied units, or they had to, maybe we had a certain keyword in the search parameters to look for, if there was a keyword in the text to say something about the zoning of the property. So
Okay.
it
Okay. So you can
that's
go that
definitely a
you can go
variable.
that far. You can go as far as like let's say if someone is thinking, oh well, that's a good idea. I'm in a urban market. I'm gonna go and maybe not scrape Zillow to the level of automation that you did it in, but maybe manually look for some leads there.
Mhm.
You can go
Sure.
and filter based on zoning. Uh, you can go and filter based on owner. Whether it's owner occupied. What other hacks or tips would you give to someone if they're thinking of leveraging, Zillow as a lead generation source and using that strategy of converting, long-term rentals to short-term rentals?
Yeah, I'd say the best advice that I can give you would be use hotpads.com. So Hotpads takes in it's owned by Zillow, but it takes in a couple of different sites, and they have the ability to filter by for rent by owner, which is huge. That isn't You're not able to do that on all of the sites. So Hotpads allows you to do that. Then you can also add in search parameters by keywords in the description. So that's the best site
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
order to do that. And then that way you've got direct access to the owner's contact information. You can filter it out because in in my experience in doing that, reaching out to realtor listings doesn't really get you too far. The realtor wants to get the
Mm,
property
sure.
rented as a long term rental, and not necessarily have the owner pull it off the market and do it as short term.
Good point. Good point. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Now, how did you go about scaling, VRM leads? I mean, you mentioned 60 markets. I'm curious to know, what was the strategy? Did you go and hire aggressively, or because it was mainly like automations, it was mainly a matter of sort of just, adding more cities to your searches, and it was in
Yep.
very sort of human intensive in that side of things. How did it go from sort of an idea that you start with this first client of yours to eventually being a business that was able to be sold, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was a surprisingly lean operation. So it
Okay.
was me and one other employee, um, and the technology to do it. So
Hmm.
and then I had a contract developer that I worked with as well. And so we
Okay, so your co-founder was not the technical sort of coder. It was you had outsourced the coding, and it was two. There was two of
Yeah,
you.
so it
Hmm.
wasn't even a co-founder. It was
Okay.
just I just paid somebody
Oh,
to
okay,
build the
okay, okay, okay. So
program.
you were the solo founder, and you had another team member. Okay.
Yeah, and so the other team member did the kind of the operation side of it, setting meetings, responding to emails back and forth, and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of setting and tracking meetings and leads and making sure that we kind of documented all of that so that the property managers knew here's the list of your leads, here's the dates that the meetings are set on,
Mm-hmm.
and that was another big selling point for us was we booked all of the meetings. So it wasn't just you got a warm lead back in and said, okay, here's the lead, good luck, follow up with them and get a time.
Mm-hmm.
We booked the meetings on a Calendly link for them, so we knew the availability, and that meeting was confirmed on their calendar. So that was most of the most intensive kind of human process, was just that back and forth of trying to get a lead to set a meeting. Because if you've done cold outreach, just sending somebody a Calendly link, very seldom are they actually going to book it. So we would actually go back and forth and say, okay, does Wednesday at 2 work, or is Tuesday at 1 better for you? And
Mm-hmm.
let them choose a time, and then book the Calendly and send them uh, the invite. So that was kind of the most intensive part. But in terms of scaling, I did, the sales side of it and just kind of networking in the industry and finding people. Surprisingly, SEO was huge for that. You wouldn't think that there would be, it's very niche, you wouldn't think there'd be that many people searching for lead generation for short term rentals, or whatever the long tail keywords were that I was doing. But I had a decent amount of inbound leads from
Really?
that
So
as
just
well.
blog posts
So,
that you were putting out,
yep,
or what was it?
yep, just blog posts and kind of general on page SEO for the website. And I think that's kind of how I caught Brooke and Ventori's
Really?
eye there, was that I was kind of competing back and forth there for the same keywords that Ventori was competing for.
Right. Did you sort of go out there and try to offer sort of your business as something that they could acquire, or were you approached?
No, it was funny when I started VRM Leads, I was unaware of Ventory at the time,
Mm,
and so I didn't know that there was anything in the market doing, kind
okay.
of lead generation. And obviously, as I got more ingrained in the industry, realized Ventory was also doing lead generation. And so Brooke and I had talked a couple of times, kind of as I was starting the business and growing, and we just kind of had a good relationship. And I definitely got to give him props too for just kind of continuing that relationship along, and instead of being like, oh, who's this guy? Screw him. He was very friendly the whole time, and always was like, hey, how's it going? And um, it just ended up where VRM leads was to a point where I was like, okay, this whole thing is built on this, single automation. It's not super stable. If this automation breaks, the business is done. And the business model of it, I learned in hindsight, wasn't, while it's a great offering for property managers, it was not a great offering for me as the business owner, because it was, oh, well, this lead didn't close, or yeah, I closed them, but what, I'm not paying you for that one or whatever. So it was this constant chasing of like trying to get
Mm.
paid,
Yeah, because
which
you were probably not
was
charging
not fun.
enough for just the meeting.
Yeah, it was $100 for the meeting. So I mean, I was not making money on the meetings. I was only making money on the commission of it being closed, and it's pretty hard to track if you're not
Yeah. And
running
what
the
was it
CRM side of it. It's pretty hard to
based on the
track.
actual revenue the property made
Based
first
on It was
year?
based on the projected
Oh,
revenue
based on
that the property
projected.
manager
Okay.
projected. Um, and then I was kind of just relying on property managers to actually tell me when something closed. it
Yeah.
was I mean, it was good with my, the good partners that I had that were honest, but I had a couple that
Right.
never paid for a closed deal. Like, I know you closed multiple deals here,
Right.
and just never admitted to it. So that
Wow.
that was difficult, and it was kind of wearing me down there. So
So if you were to
um,
do that, if you were to think through that business model again, how would you structure their pricing differently?
yeah, that's tricky because it was a great sales point to have it be um, kind of that risk reversal. Great sales point. It's almost like, why not,
Yeah, yeah,
right? From
yeah.
the property manager side. So I think I wouldn't necessarily change the model as much as I would change the way that the leads are tracked. So if there was a way to either be in their CRM and see, or, if they don't have a CRM, be, create the CRM for them. Because basically I just had a Google sheet of the leads, and so I couldn't
Mm.
actually track what had happened there. But I think that would be my biggest takeaway, is having the visibility into seeing which leads were actually closed. So
Got it. Okay, makes sense. So that's cool. You scale this pretty leanly. I don't know if that's a word, leanly. In a pretty lean way. Uh, and then you exit, right? And you join Vintory. So that we can have some time to also talk about what you did next. What would you say in terms of highlights of what you learned? Sort of working at Vintory for a few years that you took into sort of your next venture.
I think I might have had somewhat almost unfair advantage getting the opportunity to work with so many different property managers in different markets. So when I was an account manager, I managed um, between 20 and 30 different accounts, which means I was talking with 20 or 30 different successful property managers that were all growing their business. So had, just an amazing opportunity, got to speak with all of these different people and learn about their businesses, learn about some of their ways that they're growing, and what's working for them, what's not working, that sort of thing. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. And then the other thing that I'm just forever grateful for is learning how to work with developers and speak to developers and do project management and
Hmm.
scoping and stuff like that. Did not go to school for that at all, so it was great having the opportunity to kind of get to uh, do all of that professional development there as well.
That's cool. And how does sort of Beachside VR come about? When do you decide? that it's time to move on from Vintori and start your own, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Co-start
So
co-start your own management company.
yeah, one of my very good high school friends reached out. Yeah, I guess it was probably a year and a half into me working at Ventori, and he said, "Hey, I have this apartment complex that I just purchased, and I'm going to convert it all into short-term rental units. Beautiful apartment, a block away from the beach in Cocoa Beach, and he poured thousands and thousands of dollars into renovating it, making it brand new." So yeah, he's like, I know you've worked in the short-term rental industry. Can you just help me get it listed and make me a website? And I said, okay, sure, no problem. So made the website. We branded it, got them listed on all the short-term rental sites, picked out a property management system for them, and I said, wipe my hands. I was like, all right, you're off to the races. And he
Good
said,
luck.
okay,
Good
cool.
luck.
Yep, yep. And a little bit of time goes by, and he says, and I've got 8 units here. I've got a full-time cleaner. I've got some free time at the time he was doing that and working at a restaurant. He says, I have some free time. Um, what if we made a management company? And I was like, I don't want any part of that. I've got a full-time job. I'm good. I've got from New York. I was kind of burnt out on the guest relations side of things, which is what I did there, and said I don't know. And they said, well, just make me a website and I'll handle everything else, and I'll give you a stake in the company. I was like, okay. So made a website, and I, I I believe, was Riley on your podcast?
Yes, 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 yes. I
Okay,
was gonna mention it, Riley. If you want the other side of the story, on the Riley side of things, we also had him on the show. It hasn't been published yet, but it will probably by the time this is out. So
got it. Yeah. So Riley is somebody that he can sell ice to an Eskimo. He just is an amazing salesperson and can kind of talk his way into anything. So he told me that it's like, don't worry, I'll handle everything. I've got the brand now. And you got the brand, the website. I'm gonna, handle everything. If you can just help me with some of the technology stuff as we grow. I said, okay. But again, I have a full time job, can't be focusing on this at all. And he signed up our first couple of owners, and so we made a couple of technology switches to better suit what we were doing. When we first started, we didn't really need to worry about owner payouts and accounting and that kind of stuff because it was just his property. And then, as we grew, we are like, okay, we need to figure out how we're going to pay owners, right? So we need some different technology in order to do owner statements and that sort of stuff. And then as we continued growing, had to add more software in place for, managing multiple cleaners and different properties and that kind of stuff. So I continued helping out a little bit here and there and, in the beginning, but was still completely focused on my day job. And somewhere along the lines, it became, Beachside VR was a real company. It was getting to be a big company. We had quite a few owners and, quite a few properties. And there was just one day where I was like, what am I doing? I've got, I think at the time we had over 100 properties and I was still kind of working part-time. Obviously it was pulling a lot more from me. I had quite a few employees, and I was like, I need to make a decision on what I'm doing here because it's not fair to Beachside for me to not be putting in the time that I should be paying
mhm.
attention to it. And obviously it's not fair to Inventory if I'm spending time when I should be working full-time inventory. So, I had that kind of hard decision because I loved everything I was doing at Inventory and obviously love this growing business that is Beachside VR. So definitely was a hard decision to make, but it was also one where the decision was pretty much already made. I knew what had to be done.
Okay, so walk me through that process of you sitting down and saying, okay, I need to make a decision. Was there hesitation, or inside of you, you knew you just had to go for,
Yeah, no, there
beachside
wasn't
VR?
hesitation at that point. It wasn't a question of whether or not Beachside was going to be successful and if it could support me, because at that time it already was successful enough
Okay.
to
Okay.
support me. So the question, like I said, it wasn't a question as much as like I just need to kind of rip off the band-aid and
Okay.
make it happen, you know?
That's it. That's it. That's it. Now, yeah, the success. I mean, the growth that you guys have had at Beachside VR is tremendous. Is it's incredible, right? From zero to. I mean, when I was speaking with Riley, it was basically, I think, from 0 to 300 properties when you count what you have in the pipeline and everything else. Like, 0 to 300 properties. In was it 2 years?
Yeah, I'd say 2.5 years.
So yeah,
That's
it's
how long
huge.
we've been
Zero
in
to three
business.
hundred
Yeah.
properties in 2 years. Now I want to know, because you basically had that lead generation background, both from the company you built and working at Vintori. What have you applied? Is there a secret sauce? Like, what are you guys doing? You're saying, he can sell ice to an Eskimo, and he's good at sales. Have you been sort of the one then taking the lead on, like, driving pipeline and lead generation, and if so, what has been the main channel for that?
Yeah, yeah. So it's funny. It has not been what you would think. So
Okay.
we've never done an outbound campaign at all, which is, again, funny coming from Vintori where we, specialize in outbound campaigns. The majority of what we've done has been SEO. So on-page SEO for all of our supplemental pages, whether it's, the listing pages, our management page, or just the homepage, making sure that we show up for the keywords that we want. And then I would say the absolute biggest driver has been our Google business page. So if you search in any market, if you search city name, vacation rental manager, before the search results, what comes up is the Google business listings. So what I did very early on uh, in Beachside VR is, instead of asking guests to leave us reviews on the OTAs, which they're going to do anyway, the OTA is always asking them for it. We asked them to leave us a Google review. So our Google page has just blown up because all of our guests are leaving us Google reviews, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore it's pushing up our Google ranking. Um, so I'd say almost all of our inbound leads come from our Google business page. And then beyond that, local networking has just been killer for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we do a realtor referral program. We do we work with realtors to do like lunch and learns. So Riley will go into the office, bring lunch, bring donuts, whatever, and then kind of just to either give them a short presentation or do kind of a question and answer. There's
Mm-hmm.
always a lot of interest, especially in our market, Cocoa Beach, of just, what are short-term rentals? How can we help our investors who are looking for them?
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of answering some of those questions and being the go-to guy. And that was a big takeaway that I had from Ventori and from talking to a lot of other property managers and seeing what people were doing well, is if you can be the company or the person that pops in somebody's mind when they think, you know, I have an investor looking for a short-term rental, who do I go to? And they
Mm-hmm.
think Beachside VR. That's the goal, and that's what we're trying to do with these lunch and learns, is just kind of be top of mind anytime a realtor needs to give a referral.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of that is doing pro formas and underwriting, um, what projections could be for an investor, because you don't really, the agent doesn't want to be the one to say how much it's going to make, and they probably don't know. So having us be like, hey, we have a property right down the road. This is actually what it generates. Not just these are AirDNA numbers, but this is the actual amount that it generates, I think has
Mm-hmm.
helped a lot too. And being transparent with owners, saying, yeah, those numbers are not going to be right. Here's what it actually should be,
Mm-hmm.
has led to a lot of positive business as well.
Right, right, right. And I wanna go over sort of each of those strategies that you just mentioned, and see if we can dig a little bit deeper. So let's start with on-page SEO, right? Um, Sort of for dumbers, for what's the name of the books, for dummies? If you were to say, on-page SEO for dummies, 101, what can someone go and do this afternoon on their website that would help with on-page SEO? What would be the main things you would recommend someone uh, should
Yep.
focus on?
Super, just to boil it down to like the most basic terms, like the absolute most basic thing you can do is search what you want to rank for. So in my case would be, Cocoa Beach vacation rental manager. Take a look at who is ranked above you. What page is it? Is it their homepage? Is it their management page? Is it a blog post? Figure out what page that is, and then make a better page than them. Right? And by better page, I mean make it longer, make it more useful, add more images that actually support the text that you're doing if it's a blog post, so and you don't have to be an SEO expert in order to do that. And that's kind of what I've learned about doing
Mm-hmm.
that is just be better. in most simple terms is it's hard to do, but if you're thoughtful about it, just try and make more useful content, longer content, and obviously there's more to SEO. It comes to backlinks and things like that. But I would say just from a kind of bare minimum starting point, look and see who's ranking above you and try and make better content than they have.
That makes sense. Any tools you'd recommend for anyone that did that and maybe wants to go a little bit further on the SEO side of things? And any tools you guys use for SEO purposes? Given that you're an expert on anything that's tech stack and technology, what would you recommend as far as tools?
Yeah, Keyword Surfer is a good one. Um, Ahrefs is another, and SEMrush is another one. So
Mm-hmm.
we just use Keyword Surfer. We're kind of in between other technologies right now. You got to be careful because as I've learned, I love looking at new technologies, and then before you know it, you're spending like thousands of dollars a month on
Yeah,
a
it adds
bunch of
up.
different things.
It
So
adds up, right?
yeah, yeah. So just got to be careful with what you're doing. I think Ahrefs actually has a free version, so you're allowed to kind of poke around and look at some of your competitors' backlinks and how they're ranking and things like that without spending any money, which is nice.
That's awesome. Now, next strategy that you discussed is Google Business, right? So asking guests to leave Google reviews. I mean, pretty straightforward in terms of how to go about that. Have it has that does that have the risk of backfiring? I mean, there's always, I mean, on the OTAs we see it, right? Unfair guests. Um, is it easier or harder to deal with those unfair reviews that guests might leave if they are leaving it in Google versus on the OTA?
Yeah, great question. So we set it up in our auto message to you can toggle it on and off if you want to review them or not, right? So anytime there's any guest issue whatsoever, we always untoggle the should review. So we're not prompting them to leave a review. We're not sending them that auto message to ask for a review. Obviously, sometimes it slips through, and you do send an upset guest a review request, which is never good. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it comes down to. I mean, first thing, you can't grow and be a successful business if your product isn't good. So you
Mm-hmm.
got to focus on your operations, make sure that you have a good product and that you are, offering a good service. You need happy guests in order to have a good
Mm-hmm.
property management company. So that I would say that's the first thing on that. But yeah, second, we filter out who we're sending reviews to. So if anybody ever has any issues, we're not sending a request there.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, yeah, you do still run the risk, and that is probably the biggest downside to Google Business is that you are super findable. And that is, if you have somebody who's really mad, they might go leave you an Airbnb review, a Yelp review, and a Google review.
Mm-hmm.
And Google Airbnb, obviously you have the Airbnb support. If it's an unfair review, so you might be able to get it taken down. Not the case with Google. That is a true review. I've not seen anything where you're able to get those reviews removed. The only thing that
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to see is, Google says respond to it and let the people know your side of the story.
Right, right. So I
So,
guess you
yeah,
just need to counterbalance it with a lot with more, positive
exactly.
reviews.
And
But
that was another reason why we pushed it so early on, is that at one point I looked at our Google business and we had, you know, 10 reviews, and I said, what happens if we do get a 1-star review? Because it's going to come eventually. There's no avoiding it. Somewhere along the line, somebody's going to give you a 1-star review for
mm-hmm,
something.
mm-hmm,
What happens if you get a 1-star review and you have 5 or 10 Google reviews? Now all of a sudden your Google profile looks terrible.
mm-hmm.
What if you have 400 5-star reviews and one-star review? Then that 1-star review doesn't matter. So that's kind of been our mindset, is just keep pushing and trying to get as many 5 stars as possible, because then, when the inevitable 1 or 2 stars come around, they don't really make much of a difference at all.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Good points. I think those are all great things to think about in terms of, you know, using this strategy with caution, and making sure that, as you say, you have a process to turn off the reminders if it was a guest that had issues. Don't make it easier for them to leave you a bad review by reminding them about it. And lastly, you talked about referral programs, realtor referral programs. There's, I guess, so many ways in which you can put in place a referral program. You can go with upfront fixed fees, where it's like, based on the forecast, like your model with VRM Leads, where it's like, oh, this is what the property is forecasted to make. I'm gonna give you this amount, or I'm gonna go based on the number of bedrooms at the property, and if it's a 5 bedroom, I'm giving you $500, whatever that might be. Then it's like, you can also do a ref share. I'm gonna give you a percentage on the first year, etc. Right? What have you found in terms of being able to truly move the needle for realtors to be interested in actually referring business to you? I mean, what are the best practices for a realtor referral program?
Yep. So here's a secret, and this is actually something that Riley shares all the time. But people do business with people that they like. So that's the biggest thing. It doesn't matter how much you're going to pay a realtor. They're not going to send you any referrals if they don't remember you or they don't like you. So I mean, I would say the majority of our realtor referrals don't care and don't ask for the actual monetary referral amount. So I'd say that's the first thing, is that, treat their clients well, make sure that when they come to you, they're happy with the management services. You're being accurate with what you're, projecting the property at, and just overall a good business. They'll keep bringing you business because you're treating their clients well. And then again, just be somebody that the real estate agent actually likes talking to. And being that's one of our core values at Beachside VR, is being real. And I really think that's kind of the biggest thing. But what what I do like and what we offer is 1% of actual revenues of the first year. And um, I think ideally you break it out on a quarterly basis, and so you're keeping up with that agent, giving them a check every quarter, so that
Mm-hmm,
you're not paying them all up front and then they forget about you a couple months down the road. They're going to
mm-hmm,
remember when you send them a check on first quarter, second quarter, third quarter.
mm-hmm,
They're like, oh yeah, I just remembered I sent Beachside VR this lead 6 months ago and I'm still getting paid for it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So I like that model of a referral commission. Um, but like I said, honestly don't have that many realtors that are kind of even interested in the monetary part of it. They're just more so interested in um, getting their clients taken care of.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, right? Because if you're selling properties, I mean, yeah, it's a couple hundred of dollars, every quarter. That's not gonna change your
Right.
life,
It's yeah, they're not it's not they're not in it for the referral money coming from it because 1% of revenues is not making or breaking their year there. It's sure
Exactly.
it's it's nice,
It
but
adds up, but yeah, there needs to be a lot of properties for it to add up. Yeah, so that was why I was curious though, because it's like, and I think you answered it perfectly. Like, how do you actually incentivize them to want to give you, those referrals? Well, become top of mind for them, and the relationship building aspect of it. I mean, that's something that you cannot automate as much as
yeah.
there's tools out there that you cannot automate relationship building, right? So I think that's key. Listen, JJ, I could keep you here for hours. Believe me, this has been real fun. Any final thoughts on where you guys are going with Beachside VR as a company? What's the vision? What's ahead? What are you seeing in the industry as a whole that you're excited about, worried about? Just, yeah, closing thoughts in general, final sort of pieces of advice that you might have for operators. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we are, growing at rocket pace. We're actually gearing up. I had mentioned earlier that we had not done any outbound campaigns up to this time. So gearing up to start doing some outbound campaigns here in this fall. So excited about that. But we just see a lot of opportunity on our horizon. We're going to stick to our market. We don't have ambitions on going national right now. So sticking to our market, focusing on the areas that we know. We are kind of working internally on building out more businesses inside of our business. So
Mm-hmm.
looking at some opportunities there. We own our own laundry facilities, so looking at doing laundry for other hotels, property managers, that sort of thing in the area,
Mm-hmm.
and then other kind of ancillary spin-off businesses that we can continue building that kind of start out the same way as Beachside VR started, right? So, um, say we have a person in house that can do HVAC services. Why not do that for other people, not just Beachside VR clients, right? And
Mm-hmm.
kind of keep building some of those economies of scale and vertical integration as we're growing. So, super excited about that, and just keep growing and keep learning. And
I'll have to ask though, before you leave, what about that outbound campaign that you are working on setting up? What is going to be, mainly because you were saying that the Zillow approach is more so for urban markets. So what is it that you're gonna be focusing on in terms of outbound?
yeah, we're going to get super selective with the properties that we're targeting. So it's only going to be active short-term rentals in our market. And then it's going to be a direct mail campaign. Direct mail's easiest and best way to actually get to an owner. The reason we haven't done it yet is because it's expensive. You can't just send one postcard and hope that somebody's going to sign up. You've got to do it consistently, month over month. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're working on just kind of honing that list together of properties that we actually want to manage and know that they're short term, and then building out some digital or some assets to go along with that, some print assets that we can send out. So a mix of postcards, letters, handwritten letters, all of the fun stuff that I did learn at Ventori for outbound
Mm.
campaigns there. So kind of mixing all of those together. But the key is definitely with your data list and knowing what property it is, who's the owner, and that it's actually something that one is being rented short term and is not somebody's primary residence or a long term rental property, but it's actually currently a short term rental.
Yeah, so you can build I mean, you can go based on permits. I guess, there's some data available with regards to permits. Maybe, dumb question here, but like direct mail, you're trying to target the homeowner, right? But you have the address. Let's say you can find the address of the property. The homeowner doesn't live at the property. So how do you
Right.
how do you
Yeah.
go from data where it's like, you know, you have the address of the property, but the direct mail you're sending, you want the owner to see it, not their existing management company.
Right. Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
how do you
So
go about that?
you need to go look at the tax records for that property, so you can see what the mailing address is for that owner, and then you'll be able to build up a list with, owner name, mailing address, and the site address, so that you can look at your local properties that you want to manage, the mailing addresses for those owners, and then the owner name as well. So you can kind of do some dynamic fields there. Say
Hmm,
hello owner, first name. We want to manage your property, that
got it.
sort of thing. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
there's data vendors that do it, or you can do it old fashioned manual way. Go look on the property appraiser website for your municipality, and all of that information's public in the U.S. So um, yeah, it's a very manual process, and that's something we were building at Ventori, and they're still building at Ventori, is making it very easy to get all of that information. But if you're doing it manually, our team is at Beachside VR has gone through and just looked at pinpoints on Airbnb to see, where does this look like it is, and then go down Street View and see if you can find that house and
No
get
way.
the actual address. And
Really?
um,
Just
yeah, no, it's
walking
very, very
walking through
manual.
the neighborhood on Google Maps.
Yep, very manual. But if it gets you $100,000 a year property,
Yeah,
was it worth an extra 10 minutes to go find it? I think so.
worth the
You
virtual
know?
walk for sure.
Yep,
All right, all right. Well, that's
absolutely.
cool. I mean, I'm glad we ended with that as well. Very practical, very very useful. JJ, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people connect with you?
Find me on LinkedIn. Yep,
Yeah,
JJ
JJ, right?
King on
JJ
LinkedIn.
King. It's not gonna be hard
Yep.
to find. All right. Thank you so much for your time, JJ. I hope to see you soon
Thank you.
at one of the upcoming conferences. Take care.